so to make sure that we don't hear any background noise or anything. All right. Okay, so to start the training, what you do when you get into Concur, there's a link over here on Pico called Concur Training Travel and Expense, and there's also a link underneath it called the Concur Training page. So the first thing I want to mention is that if you click on this link right here, Concur Travel and Expense, it's going to log you straight in. Everyone should have a login. You should be able to click on that and log straight in. If you have trouble with that, send an email to help@pky.com to get help. But this should take you straight in. If you get an email from Concur, it will take you, if you click the link on the email, or if you just type in concursolutions.com, you're going to go to the Concur main page. It looks like I typed in the wrong thing. Apologize, but let me do this. If you want to click on this, it's going to log me in, and that's what should happen. You should log straight in. But if I log out, if I hit log out, if you get an email from Concur, or if you go to Concur a different way, you're going to see this page right here, and you can click sign in, and you can say, hey, right here you can say forgot my password, and you can get your password. But the easiest thing to do is not to do that, is to start from Pico and click that link, and it'll take you straight in. So just be aware that emails that come from Concur will not give you that straight login link. They're going to give you this other page that I just showed you. All right, so the first thing I want to show is this Concur training page. So I clicked that second link, the Concur training page, and on this page we have a lot of useful information. On the left-hand side, we have a link to a video that was a previous training session I did. Then we have a link to the login page that I just showed you, which you can bookmark that if you want to. We have a link to the support desk. So any questions you have, if I click that support desk link, this is going to take me straight to the support that is provided by Concur. We pay Concur a fee to have access to their online support, and there's a lot of nice functionality there. Over here we've got submit a case, we can do live chat, we can do a phone call. So over here is the contact us stuff, and this live chat is very nice if you have a quick question. It's sort of like doing instant message. But also there's some frequently asked questions, and you can just kind of search for a question like missing receipt. So what if if I don't know what to do if I have a missing receipt, I can click on this and get answers as to what to do about a missing receipt. So a lot of helpful information right there. We try to put a lot of stuff on Pico, but we can't cover every single aspect of the application on Pico, so use that training that's provided by Concur. So I'm going to go back to the training page now. All right, so here we are on the training page. We've got some FAQs. These are frequently asked questions that have more to do with Parkway. So if it's a general question about how to use the application, we're going to leave that to Concur, the Concur training link that I just showed you right here, which is also available once you log into the application. That's where to get information on the product itself. But things like, who do I call if I need a credit card, or what if my legal name is incorrect? And then we've got like Lisa Moore is the person to contact. So we've got information like that. And so far we've got about 12 questions. One is, how do I create an expense report for someone else? So if you're administering for someone else, here's some information on how to do that. So really good information here on this Pico site. Over here on the right-hand side is the top 5 things you need to do. So this is another link to the YouTube video, which is a previous training session that I've recorded. I've highlighted some of the menu options that are related to the top 5 things. And so right now during the training, I'm going to go through these top 5 things. But I also want to make you aware down here at the bottom, we do have some training links that are provided actually by Concur. So this expense reporting training link is a walkthrough of how to do an expense report. So again, there's a lot of resources here. Like here's one on car mileage. So if you need to know how to do car mileage, you can click that link. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. I hear some people talking in the background. I'm just going to mute all the phones here.
Welcome to the Working with Car Mileage demonstration. Click Next when you're ready to continue.
All right, so you may have heard that. It's you can kind of go through this.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
you can hear, you might have heard the person talking. Basically, you click through and it'll
After completing this lesson,
it'll walk you through how to do car mileage, and then there's lots of different topics here that you can see. All right, so that's a lot of the training that's available. There's how to book travel. There's how to use the iPhone app. There's some other documents down here. All right, but let's go through the top 5 things you need to do to get started. So again, I'm going to go back to Pico. I'm going to click the Concur Travel and Expense link, which is going to log me straight in. All right, so here I am. This is my Concur tab here at the top. This is my home page, and I'm logged in as Wesley Lomenick, which is myself. Now, if I'm administering for other people, it says you are administering for yourself. If I'm administering for other people, I can click that and I can say, I want to change. I have Jennifer Costa in here, so I can say I want to switch and do Jennifer Costa. Or I can click search and I can find, let's say I want to put Larry Mayo. So there's Larry, and I can just go ahead and sign myself up to assist Larry Mayo. So just be aware that if you're administering for other people, that's how you switch between yourself and other people. All right, so over here is how to book travel. Over here is a summary of everything that's going on in Concur for you. So at the very top, we have an 800 number you can call to book travel. We've got a Concur travel tutorial. We've got travel booking training. So again, more training links. We've got all my expense reports. So I've got 3 expense reports. 2 are approved. 1 is submitting and pending approval. I've got an approval queue because I approve expense reports for other people. So anything that's needed for me to approve is going to show up there. I've got my credit card link, so I have an American Express card that's given to me by the company, so any charges that I would need to expense would show up here. And then I have upcoming travel that I have. So this is some trips that I've taken that show up that I might need to do expense reports for. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to the profile. And then the top 5 things over here, these top 5 things all happen in the profile. You see this says My Profile, and I've highlighted some menu options. I get that by clicking this profile right here. So I'm going to click Profile. Here is that menu. That's the screenshot that I took. So the very first thing that I have highlighted on that is personal information. So you click that. And what you're going to want to do is basically, this is a fairly lengthy page. You're going to want to fill out all your information. Now, if you're traveling, if you're going to book travel, your first name and last name and everything needs to match what's on your driver's license or your passport or whatever government-issued identification you have. And so mine is Wesley Randolph Lomenick, and I put in my nickname as Randy. So this is grayed out for me. I can't change it. I would have to send an email to Lisa Moore to get that changed. Then you put in, it says enter your profile PIN, a numeric employee ID, mobile phone number, with no dashes. So I put in my mobile phone number with no dashes. So this is just used if you ever call Concur support and you need to have them help you with something. They may ask you for this number. So just put your mobile phone number or your home phone number if you want to, some number that you can remember that you can give to them that proves who you are. So that's what that's used for. Then you put in your work address, and you can use this search over here to find it. Or you can type it in. If you search over here, you're going to get the list of, let's see if I put in Phoenix, there's Squaw Peak. So I could select Squaw Peak as my address, and then that would populate over here. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to delete that. So then you put in your home address, and then this is again for travel. You put in your contact information. Now these ones that are highlighted in yellow are required. So you need to fill those out. You do not have to fill out this other stuff unless you're traveling, and particularly you need to know this stuff if you're traveling. Email address verification. So this is used if you want to email in receipts. You would click Add an email address over here on the right. You click Add an email address. You type in the email address that you want to add. It's going to send you an email that asks you to come in here and verify it, and there's instructions in the email that you get about how to verify an email. But what that does is when you email your receipts to this particular address, which is receipts@concur.com, if you email a receipt to receipts@concur.com after you've verified your email address, it will show up as a receipt that you can attach to an expense. So that's one way to get expenses into the system, is to do that. The next thing is emergency contact. Again, this is not required, but especially for if you're traveling, you need to have an emergency contact. And again, now travel preferences. So I've got a whole bunch of frequent flyer, frequent stayer numbers. If you're not traveling, you don't need to fill this out, but this is important if you are traveling. This, let's see, let me keep going here. So you can read the rest of this. Let's see. Assistance and travel arrangers. So if you have someone who books travel on your behalf, if by default this is unchecked, so they can go in and book travel for you unless you check that to say refuse self-assigning assistance. I like to book my own travel, so I've checked that. But if you want to manually add someone, like if I want someone else in the company to book travel on my behalf, I can click add an assistant and give that person the ability to book travel on my behalf. That does not give them the ability to create an expense report for you or approve an expense report for you. It's nothing to do with expense reports. It's only booking travel. But I'll show you how to do expense reports in a minute. And then finally, if you have a credit card, a corporate credit card, you can add that here. So you click add credit card. You need to put in the address under work address. You need to put in the address that the credit card is registered to, which is going to be your office location. And then you would put, what you want to use it for. You want to use it for any types of travel if it's a corporate credit card. So that's what that's for. If you do not have a corporate credit card, you don't need to fill that out. And then I encourage you to click Save throughout here, and it'll give you warnings if you haven't filled out any required information. But that's the personal information. The next thing would be credit cards, which that's already on here, but that's the next thing that's highlighted. So that's on this same page. Not highlighted on that instructions, but also necessary is the expense information. If you click expense information, you can put a property code there. So all of my property, when I do an expense report, generally it's for PPLP. You would put whatever property code you are assigned to, and that's just going to help you in terms of it's going to remember that, and every time you do an expense report, it's going to default to this property code. The job codes and job categories, you don't need to fill that in because those would default on your expense report, and you don't want them to default because they're going to be different every time. And if you aren't familiar with job and job category, those are used for capital expenditures, like if we're doing some sort of project like building out a space for a customer and it's a capital project, you would put a job code and a job category. If you do not, on your expense report, most of the time you're not going to put that there, but you do have the ability to put that there. And then also business purpose. Again, this would be a default business purpose that is used on every single expense report. And so business purpose, job, and job category probably should not be set here unless you're going to have the same one every time. But definitely property is going to be something you're going to want to set because it's going to typically be whatever property you're associated with. Bank information is required. What this is used for is only to deposit funds into your account. So if you do an expense report and you need money back from Parkway, this is how you get the money back. And generally, if you don't have a corporate credit card, you're going to be spending your own money, it's going to be called cash, but you could be using a credit card, a check, or cash out of pocket. It's all called cash as to differentiate it from a corporate credit card. But if you do not have this set up, you cannot get money back from Parkway. So this is the first thing you have to do, and you cannot submit an expense report without doing this. So you take a check, get the bank routing number and the bank account number, and put all that in. And then it takes a couple of days to validate, and once it's validated, you're good to go. And that's how you get expense reimbursements from the company. The next one down from that, so we're under expense settings over here. We did expense information, which is the defaults. Then we did bank information. Now we're doing expense delegates. So this would be where if you had someone you wanted to do an expense report for you, I clicked add, and if I say I want Larry Mayo to do my expense report on my behalf, it should find him in there. Well, the Larry's not allowed to do an expense report, so let me say Jason Lipsy. Oh, it's looking for an email. Larry Mayo. All right. So if I type in Larry's email address, there he is. So there I selected Larry, and I selected him by email. I say he can prepare my expense report, he can submit an expense report, he can view my receipts, he receives all my emails, and if I check, he's not an approver, that's what I was referring to earlier. If he were eligible to be an approver, like if he's my manager and I want him to do my approvals for me, I could say, click, yeah, he can approve, and he can receive approval emails. That'll just give him an email, let him know when something's been approved. So I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to click delete. But that's how you add someone who can do expense reports on your behalf on a regular basis. Now, if you are traveling, you have this travel vacation reassignment option down here under other settings, and you can temporarily reassign your expense reports to someone else if you're going to be gone for an extended period of time. All right, so you can look through all these other things, and another thing to mention is e-receipt activation. If you have a corporate credit card, you need to turn on e-receipt activation, just because that simplifies the process of doing expense reports. You don't have to, for any kind of hotel or airfare, it will give you an electronic receipt. So that's just another function. Feel free to click on any of these links and look at them. All right, so that's setting up a profile. I'm going to real quickly try to unmute everyone. So if you're chatting, be aware we're going to be able to hear you, and just see if anybody has any questions.
I have a question.
Okay, Deborah Stubbs has a question here in the room.
How long does it take Concur to reimburse an employee?
The question is how...
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Okay, so if you don't want to speak, please mute your phone. I do hear some people chatting in the background. Deborah's question is, how long does it take to get a reimbursement? The reimbursements are done around the 25th of every month by Lisa Moore, and so if you get your expense report in by the time she does it, and generally she's been sending an email saying get your expense report done, if it's submitted and approved by your manager by that time, then that's when you'll get reimbursed. Are there any other questions now that we've gone through the profile?
Larry, this is Peter in Atlanta. I have a question.
Okay.
I actually administer several sites. I have 3 buildings that I will have expenses on. How do I have to do 3 different reports?
No, you can do them all in the same report, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Now, the default, you can only have one building be your default building, but you can change that, and I'll show you. Any other questions? Anybody else? All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute the phone again.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
All right, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to my Concur. We've gone through, we've set up our profile, and now that that's all set up, I'm going to do an expense report. So today I'm not going to show corporate card, but if you did have a corporate card, the charges would show up down here, and you could add those to an expense report. I'm going to pretend that I don't have a corporate card, just do an expense report. So I would click on this button that says New Expense Report. So for my new expense report, I click that, and now we're in the process of creating an expense report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this one Training for June 2013, and then the report date's fine. There's 2 business purposes, and that's really a quirk with the system. This business purpose is one that Concur provides. This is the one that Parkway actually uses because of, and I won't go into it, but this is the one we need to use. Now, if you put something there, it's fine, but this is the one we actually use. So you can put a comment that relates to the entire report, such as testing/training only, and then I'm going to put default business purpose. And that is going to be the business purpose that's going to be on each one of my line items. So if I click, now again, these are not required. The only one that's required is this one with the red bar on it. You can leave those blank if you choose to, and you'll have a chance to put them on each individual line item as well. All right, so here I am, and I've got some expenses that I previously entered with the iPhone app, which I'm not going to train on today, but you can use the iPhone app to bring in expenses. What I'm going to do is, instead of doing that, I'm going to click New Expense. All right, so this is what you would normally see. So here's a new expense, and I'm going to say, let me just do mileage. So if I type in car, I'm getting car rental, car mileage. I'm going to say, okay, car mileage is what I want to do. So I select that, And now I've got my new expense over here. I can view the reimbursement rates by clicking that. This is my expense type, and again, I can change that. I just picked car mileage, but you can see that you can choose from a whole list there. The transaction date, that's going to be the day that I took the trip. So let's say I went on Monday, and I went from the Jackson office to the Orlando office, and I can put in the distance here, or I can use this mileage calculator. So rather than put in the different distance manually, I'm going to do the mileage calculator. So if you click this mileage calculator, you get just a little map, and it says, I don't know where it got. I guess it just tried to guess when I put in Jackson office. Let's see here. If I put in just 39110, that's my home address, and then I put in, let's see, 390 North Orange Avenue. It's pulling from company locations, so it knows that 390 North Orange Avenue is one of our offices. So I can say, yep, that's the one I want. I click Calculate Route, and there it goes, and it says that's 705 miles. Now, I can deduct my commute, so it knows where I live and it knows where my office is. If I click Deduct Commute, it already knows that my commute is 19 and a half miles because I've already put in my personal info. I put in my home address. I also put in my office address, so it knows to deduct 19.5 miles because I don't get paid for my back and forth to the office. So I'm going to say deduct the round trip because it's a round trip, and I'm going to say add mileage to expense. No, I'm sorry. I wanted to make it a round trip, so I went there and back. So now it's 705 miles, 705 miles. This checkbox here means was it personal, and I'm going to say this is a business trip, deducting my round trip of my commute home. I say add mileage to expense, and there it put in 1,371 miles for a total of $774. So that would be a very nice trip for me to take. You see how it's got the business purpose is a required field, and it says default business purpose. That's because that's what I typed in on the screen at the top, and I typed it into the second one, not the first one. But I'm going to change this one. I'm going to say testing only, but you can put whatever your business purpose is, but it is required that you put some sort of business purpose. Notice that it also changed my from and to location because I did the mileage calculator. Job category and job, again, that is for capital expense. If you're doing a project that requires capital expenses, then that's where you put that. Now, let's say somebody had a question about what if it's a different building that I want to charge this to. First of all, I've got property here, and that's defaulting. So on each line item, you don't have to do a different expense report. If this is for this building, and I have another line item that's for a different building, I just change it right here on each line item, and I'll show you what I mean by line item. They're going to show up over here. But another thing I can do, this is a fairly large expense, I can allocate that. Let's say, there's my line item. I clicked on allocate. It's taking it a second. All right, so here I am in my allocation. I'm going to say, right now it says 100% of this goes to Hayden Ferry. If I say add a new allocation, it's now split it evenly, 50-50. And I'm going to say, the other 50% goes to Desert Ridge because that's what I was traveling, and on the way out there I went to Hayden Ferry. On the way back I went to Desert Ridge, even though those are nowhere near where I was traveling. So I click Save. Allocations have been saved. So now that is a way to take an expense line item and allocate it to different locations. And so to see that allocation, I would have this little pie chart over here. Shows me that I have an allocation, and if I hover over it, it shows me what the allocation is. So let's a more realistic example. Let's say you go to Home Depot and you buy a bag of junk, and in that bag of stuff, you have some stuff you bought for one property and some stuff you bought for another property, and you got one receipt, you got one transaction. You can split that transaction this way. You click the allocate button. Okay, so I could go in and say, and it doesn't have to be percentage. You can put in dollar amount. I can say $10 was for this reason or this building, and $20 was for this building. All right, and then I click Save, and now I have one line item. And now see over here, it's shown, once I click save, it's expecting me to do a new expense. So here is a new expense. Over at the top it says new expense. And I can pick a category that I want to use for that new expense. And here's my car mileage line item. If I click back on car mileage line item, I'm now looking at that line item again, and I can change it or whatever I need to do. If I want to do a new expense now, I can either click save and it'll take me back automatically to the new expense, or I could click this new expense button up here. All right, so here I am with the new expense item, and the next thing I want to do is, let's say I had gas on the trip that I needed to do, and what I want to show you here is, and again, this is not a required field, but it's helpful to your manager to know, like, okay, tell me why, who the vendor was, why you bought it there, what the amount was. Let's say I bought $30 worth of gas. Again, here's my default business purpose. I'm going to change that to different reason here. And again, we had the question about different properties. I can pick a property here. I need to pick a valid property, but anyway, you get the idea. So that car mileage here was a different property than what this line item is going to be. And so I can put in a comment. If I click personal, that means that in the case where you have a corporate credit card and you have a corporate credit card transaction comes in that was personal to you and you do not want the company to reimburse you, you click personal. And that means that you're going to pay American Express for that on your own. Now, if it's not a credit card transaction that's come in, then just you don't need to create an expense report item for it. This personal button is only for credit card transactions that if it was a personal charge that you put on your corporate card, you'll need to use that. But otherwise, you just don't even submit it. So I'm going to show you how to attach a receipt. So here I am. I need to submit a receipt for this gas charge. And first of all, what you have to do is you have to scan the receipt on your scanner. It's going to come in your email, and then you can. Earlier, I showed you in the profile how to verify your email. You can forward that to that receipts at Concur. Once your email is verified, as long as it's coming from your email account and not someone else's. For example, if you have someone preparing an expense report for you, you cannot do the email option because it's going to come from their email address and not yours. But if you're doing your own, you can verify your email address and email it in. It takes it about 5 minutes to show up. So if you want it to be a little quicker, the easier thing to do is scan it to your email, save it to your C drive on your desktop, and then you click Attach Receipt, and two things happen. Anything that I've emailed in or previously put in my receipt store from my iPhone application shows up here. So these are some previous expenses. So like here's a parking charge that I have, and I can click that and magnify it, and I can see I spent $35 on parking, and I can just say, okay, I like that one. I'm going to click Attach. Okay, and that will attach that to the receipt, to the expense. I can scroll through all the transactions I have in here that I've previously scanned in, or I can click Gallery, and here's a list of all the receipts that I have in my receipt store waiting for me to use them. If I do not already have it in my receipt store, and again, the way stuff gets in your receipt store is by emailing it in, I can click Browse. And here on Browse, I can find anything that's on my C drive. So I have some JPEGs, some images that I've taken. I've got my documents. So if I had just a PDF file, it doesn't, anything like that that's on my machine. This PDF file is probably pretty big, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. I click Open, and there's the PDF file, and I click Attach. So now I have a new tab here. I've got my expense, my Exxon charge, and I have a receipt image attachment. So this happens to be some documentation, but if it were an image, you would, let's see, cancel this. That's just Adobe giving me some startup stuff. So it's viewing it in Adobe, and you can see that if this were a receipt, this is how it would look. Okay, so this other button up here, Receipt Store. If I do have stuff in my stored, remember I showed you the receipt store, I can just scroll through it, find it, and say, okay, this is the one I want. I'm going to go ahead and attach that. This green button up here says attach that. It says there's already an image associated. Choose yes to append or no to cancel. So if I say no, it's going to cancel it. So first of all, if I want to change this, I have to go detach from entry. So I'm looking at this Adobe image here. I'm going to say detach it because I messed up. and now I'm gonna attach this one. Okay, so if I wanted to have multiple receipts attached, I could have said yes, and it would have just appended it to the end of that. So I could have said this receipt and this receipt, but instead I said no, I'm going to detach that one and attach this one. So now if I'm looking at my receipt, it might take it a second to come up, but that's going to show me that receipt. And then I click Save. All right, so now I've got two line items over here. I've got my gas expense, my car mileage expense, and this is showing me, if I hover over that little green check mark, it's going to show me my receipt. And if I hover over this blue thing, it's showing me my comment. The comment is that it was entered by me. Okay, so again, if I click on the line item, I see all the detail. I can go in and change things. I can change my comment. I can change my property, etc. If I'm done, it says total requested $804. I can click Submit Report. It says, are you sure you want to? And I can click Submit. Now, my boss, Jason Lipsey, and this is before I go there, this is a summary of what I submitted, and it's giving me a chance to give feedback to Concur. I don't see this, Concur sees this, so if you want to tell Concur something, you can do that. So I click Close. So now that has been submitted. If I go to my Concur, I see that my training for June 2011 has been submitted and pending approval, and so if Jason were to jump in there real quick and approve this, I'm going to get $800, whatever that number is, $804 deposited into my bank account. And then I would have to write a check to Payback Parkway because that's not valid. So I'm going to go in here since this is training, and I'm going to click that. And I'm going to say recall. So if I made a mistake and my manager has not yet approved it, I can recall it. Do we want to recall? Yes, I do. So now I've recalled it back, and now I can go in and fix whatever I need to fix. I'll be like, whoops, I put the wrong property code here. Let me correct that. Luckily I noticed it before my manager got a chance to ask me about it. So I go in and fix that and move on. So I'm going to unmute now. That's pretty much the core of doing an expense report. I have not covered travel yet, which I will do for those of you that are travelers, but that's the core of how to submit an expense report. Well, actually, before I do questions, I want to show you one more thing. So there's a fairly common problem, which is I lost my receipt. If you click on this Receipts button here, you can do, hang on. All right, if I'm on in here, I click on Print Email, not Receipts. I misspoke. There's this fax receipt cover page, and it's not very self-explanatory. But if you click fax receipt cover page, what this will do is another way to submit your expenses is by fax. We're not going to cover that in the training because I don't think that anybody wants to use fax. But included on the fax is this missing receipt affidavit, and it just says, I acknowledge that this expense report contains legitimate expenses, and I'm missing the receipt. So you go in there, and there will be a checkbox. Let me actually do this. If I go in here and I go to my receipt image and I detach it, so now this receipt is missing. There's no receipt image. I go in here and I say fax receipt cover page. It should have a list of expenses with missing receipts, and I'm not sure. Maybe it's because it doesn't hit the dollar amount. Let me go change the dollar amount. I apologize. Let's change this to $100. Okay, so now it says missing receipt because there's a limit. Receipts are not required for under $75. So now this says, hey, receipt's missing. I don't have the receipt. So I go to my fax receipt cover page, and now it says, okay, you got a $100 gas charge. I'm going to check that box, and then I'm going to print this out and sign it. And I'm saying I am signing to say that even though I don't have a receipt, this is really a valid, legitimate expense. So you're signing an affidavit. The auditors will come back and audit this, and if you don't have your affidavit signed, they're going to call you and ask you for it. So you print this out, you scan it in, and you attach it just like you attach any other receipt. Once you get that in the system, you go in here and you attach that affidavit to the line item just like it was a regular receipt. So now if I try to submit this report, it's not going to let me. It's going to say, sorry, you need to attach the receipt images. So if I click attach receipt images, it says, okay, which one you want to do? I'll say I want this one, and I'll say browse, and then I'll find my receipt. So So you can do it this way as well, and you got to click upload. So I just did it, and now I can go ahead. Now I've cleared all my problems, and I can go ahead and click submit. I'm not going to submit this again, so as not to confuse Jason. All right. So now I'm going to unmute and see if we have any questions. Let's see what happens here. Anybody got any questions? I think it's still in the process of unmuting.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Okay, now we're unmuted. Who has a question?
I do. Randy, this is Jennifer in Orlando.
Hi.
Hi. I just have a question. Say, as for audit reasons, if you don't keep your receipt when you buy gas, but you bought it with your debit card, could you use it showing up on your bank statement?
Yes, yes, you could submit that as a expense receipt. You would scan your bank statement. If you need to block out any personal identifying, your credit card number, do that, and then scan that just like a receipt.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Hey, Randy?
Yeah.
Yeah, Randy, this is Peter again.
Hey.
When traveling between buildings during the day multiple times, how do you do that one?
Peter, one thing you can do is you can just type in the number. You can just say, I did 10 trips, and I'll just go and type in the number. And then you can, if you need to, you can allocate. So you could go in and hit that allocate button, which I just did, and you could put in, instead of by percentage, you could do by amount. And you could say, well, I want $387 to go to this building, and another amount, I want only $50 to go to that building. And now it's saying, well, it added another line item for me because I've allocated. You see here, it's got the total, and then I've got the amount allocated, and I've got the amount remaining. So I know I've got some more money I need to allocate. So I can just keep doing that. Now I want to tell you another thing you can do, which is you can, on this mileage calculator, if you make a multiple trips, you see how it's got multiple locations here. I can add more locations. So I could put, this location on there. These are all our buildings in Atlanta. So I just added another location. So, you can do it that way. The mileage calculator is...
multiple.
Pardon?
Can you do multiple days, or do you have to put it each day?
You could do multiple days. I mean, this mileage calculator is really a convenience. It's not required that you go in and do this. So what I would do on that is, if you're saving it up for multiple days, just go in and type in the number, keep a spreadsheet, I guess, for documentation. But if you know how many miles it is you need to do, it's 10 miles and you took 10 trips, then just put in 100 miles. And you don't need to do the mileage calculator. Any other questions?
It's like,
So on the date, what would you do?
Oh, on the date, yeah.
Date.
Yeah, I would just put in the date that you're, the date of the week, like the Monday of the week, and then I'd probably put in a comment. I would say, there were 20 trips or whatever.
Just for a month trip?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, exactly. This particular one doesn't have a comment for some reason, but you could put in the business purpose, all trips for the month or whatever.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my other question. Thanks.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem. Anybody else got a question? All right. And again, I think I said this, I hope I said this at the beginning, but this is only for owned buildings. If you are working at a managed building, third-party building, and typically those are buildings that were legacy EOLA buildings that were on the MRI system, those buildings still have to go through the old process, and the reason for that is we have to deduct any cash payments out of the owner's bank account. So be aware that you're not going to find MRI or owned buildings, third-party buildings in this list. It's only going to be managed buildings. All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute again unless anybody else has a question. All right. Okay, so real quickly, that's expenses, that's attaching receipts and so forth.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
Final thing I want to show you is how to book travel. And so if you had an opportunity to do travel, you would have had to fill out your travel profile, which we went through at the very beginning. Here's your departure city, your arrival city. I'm going to put in Orlando. And then you put in your departure date. If you've ever used like Travelocity, it's very similar. I put in a departure date and time. I put, do I want to find a hotel? And I put, I want to find a hotel near company location. So I put in choose a company location, and then I click search. I'm sorry, I need to get an airport. That's why it's telling me that. I'm going to put in MCO because that is Orlando Airport. Okay. So now my company locations show up, and I'm gonna go to the corporate office. So I've said I want to find a company. I want to find a hotel that's within 15 miles of the company office. So I click search. It's saying there's no nonstop flights during this time, but there is one that's outside of my window. It says, do you want to expand your search so you include those nonstop flights? I'll say yes. Same thing on the return. Do I want to expand? I'm going to say no on that one. All right, and now it's going out to all the major carriers, including Southwest, and it's searching for flights. And so while this green bar is going, it's still searching. And so I'm going to let it finish searching. All right, so now I've got this panel over here lets me sort of filter the search results and change the departure time and the arrival time. This grid up here at the top lets me say, do I want only Delta flights? Delta has 30 nonstop flights. Southwest has 31 stop flights. Southwest has 1 nonstop and 2 one-stop flights. I know that I always want to take Delta. These other carriers never have a good price for me, so I'm just going to say I only want Delta results. So now it just filtered my grid down here, and I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the outbound by schedule. I could shop by fare or by schedule. I'm looking at outbound flights. And I'm just going to say, yep, this is, well, actually, that's pretty high. That's $779. I'm going to pick even a more expensive one and see what happens. I'm going to pick this $1,000 flight. So this is the one I've selected now, chosen carriers. I've selected that one. Now it's switched over to my return. So if I click this tab, I go to my outbound. If I click this tab, I go to my return. All right, now I'm going to select my return flight. I'll just pick this one. All right, so now I've got here my chosen carriers. I've got my outbound, my return. I can look at it and I can say, yep, that's what I want. I'm going to say click price these options. So now what it's doing, I still haven't booked it. It's showing me, hey, you've booked a $1,000 flight. I can click this yellow reserve button, but it's showing me, look, you got a $402 option. You got a $413 option. You sure you don't want to pick one of these cheaper options? This is yellow because if you try to book a flight that is a certain amount higher, percentage higher, it's going to warn you that this is out of policy. Now, you can still book it. It's just going to tell you, hey, this is a lot more expensive than what we would expect you to book given the fact that there's these other flights. Now, if all these other flights were also $1,000, it would not do that. It would say, fine, the cheapest flight you can get is $1,000, so that's what you got to have. But this is saying, no, you can't have $1,000. I mean, we're going to warn you about this $1,000 flight since there's a $400 option down here that's similar. I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to reserve it. This pop-up box is saying, keep in mind this is non-refundable. I'll say, fine. I still haven't booked the flight. I'm just getting ready. Now, because I booked a flight that is not in compliance, it's more than $200 above the typical or the next cheapest fare, I'm going to say, hey, I decline due to time constraints. I had to be on that flight to get to my meeting, needed to be on site at that time. So that was the best flight I could get. So I click save. So now if somebody goes back and looks at this and says, hey, Randy, why'd you book that really expensive flight? That's my reason why. So they can go and look at that. So now it's reserving the flight. So this is actually going to reserve the seat. So now I'm guaranteed to get that rate. It's going to hold it for me for 24 hours. So if you have to leave your desk at this point and come back in, that flight reservation will still be there for 24 hours. All right, so now it's going to hotel. So it's saying, okay, you told me you wanted to be at the corporate office. Here's the corporate office is down in here somewhere. There it is. That's the corporate office. And this is showing me hotels near the corporate office. So if I say, hey, I like this one right here, this Embassy Suites, that's number 10 in the list. So I go down here to number 10. Okay, it's a 3-star hotel. It's 0.45 miles from the company location that I selected. If I click more info, it's going to give me all the additional info on the hotel and also the fare rules. And it's showing me this is $200 a night. And I can see, you can see the other choices here and how much they cost. I'm going to say, well, I've stayed here before. I know this is the right hotel for me. I'm going to choose a room. So I click choose room. Here's all the different types. Hang on, let me scroll down a little bit. All right, here's all the different types of rooms. So I got a bunch of rooms for $200, another preferred room it's 210. There's one for $215, one for $220. So pardon me, I got to scroll down. All right, so I want this one. And I read all the details about the differences in all these, probably double or queen or whatever. So I click reserve, and it's got my frequent stayer number here. I click reserve. Now it's going to go reserve that hotel for me. Now this is popping up to tell me, cancellation policy, things like that. So I got to say, yeah, I read that. I understand the cancellation policy. And so now I'm making my reservation. And again, it's only going to hold it for me for 24 hours at this point. I still have not finalized my reservation. So I've got my flight, got my hotel. I could book a car. I'm not going to go through that, but if you need a rental car, you can do that. And okay, so now this is a summary, and here's where I can add a car. Here's a summary showing me my trip, my outbound, my return, my total estimated cost, all the little details, and then I look at all that and I say, yeah, that's fine, let me click next. I click next and it says trip name and trip description. So I need to put in something in here, like if I take multiple trips from Jackson to Orlando, I need to put in something more descriptive, like this is a trip for training only. So that's just going to be for me and my boss, and like a year from now, if I get audited and I need to go back and remember what this is for, that's what that's for. So I can display it, I can put it on hold for 24 hours now, or I can click next. All right, I'm going to click next. I don't want to hold it. And it says, now it's giving me one more chance to look at it. After all is said and done, here's everything you're going to do. And then I click purchase tickets. Only if I click purchase tickets now will it actually purchase them. So you go through all that, gives you lots of chances to look at it and review it. And then you click purchase. I'm going to click cancel, because I don't actually want to book that trip. It says, are you sure? It means you're going to cancel the entire reservation. So now it's got to go through the process of unreserving all those things that it reserved for me. And it says, something about the hotel. I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, that's fine. All right, so that's the real quick overview of how to book travel. If you do book travel, we want you to use Concur to book your travel so that the company gets the best rates and things like that. All right, I'm going to unmute everyone so we can get some questions here. All right, it's giving me my cancellation number for the hotel. I'm going to return to the travel center.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
All right, so right now it returned me to the travel tab where I can see all my travel stuff. I'm going to go back to my Concur. And then again, this is my summary. If I had booked that hotel reservation, it would show up here, or that flight would be under my trip list. And then, as you do expenses, you can associate them with the trip, but that's not required. So you just do your expense report just like we talked about. Are there any questions? All right, if you do have questions, you can email help@pky.com and we will help you. Lisa Moore is the person that does the processing of the expense reports every month, so you'll hear from her every month. Reminding you to submit your expense report, especially if you have a corporate card. If there's no more questions, I think we're done. All right, thanks everybody.